Hi, I'm Stephanie,
And I'm Justy, and
and
together
together
we're
we're
losing
losing
it.
it. We've each lost over 100 pounds with the help of diet, exercise, and breaking bad habits. And I also had weight loss surgery in 2020.
And I recently had skin removal surgery.
We're just sharing our journey and what we've learned throughout the process.
And we're not doctors, so if you have any medical questions, reach out to your doctor.
Welcome back, friends. We are back after a slight break that we took just for us to take time to kind of regroup, recharge, take a breath. Justy's super busy opening a new bakery, and that's kind of consuming her time. I just recently moved, and obviously that has consumed my time. But we're back. We have some really good info. We've been tossing some ideas around, and we're going to talk today about stalls and plateaus. It is something that we've had many of over the course of our weight loss journey. Everybody will. It's just not, you're never going to be able to escape it. So it's something that happens to everybody. And we're going to share some things that we wish we would have learned prior, maybe would have helped the head work a little bit. So with that being said, I'm going to let Justy kind of talk about the definition or kind of what like stalls and plateaus mean and what the difference is between the two.
Yeah, so super excited to be back. So stalls and plateaus, the difference between the two basically is one is longer. They're both a stop in progress. So you've made some progress and then all of a sudden it stops. So a stall is going to stop for about 2 to 3 weeks. And once it's a plateau, it's kind of been longer than that. And then if you gain weight, that's a regain. So there's like three different phases of that you can kind of stop yourself and reset. So we're going to talk about that today. A stall is when you reach a stall and you realize that you're like not losing weight. If you continue to do the same thing that you did to lose that first amount of weight and it doesn't change after 2 or 3 weeks, that's a plateau. But if you stay strong through that 2 or 3 weeks, that stall will go away for the most part. So Stephanie's going to talk a little bit about when you probably will see a stall and when you will probably see a plateau. And then we're both going to talk about things that we wish we would have done differently or we do differently now in order to help the process.
Yeah. So, in us talking about it, and so for me, when I learned the most about like stalls was after my bariatric surgery. And so most bariatric patients have done like a shit ton of research. And one of the things that I learned is everybody was saying the 3 week stall, the 3 week stall, the 3 week stall. So I kind of knew it was coming, but I do hear people say that they had no idea it was coming. And that's really hard because you've made this life-changing decision. You've gone under the knife and you're ready to like, you're all in. You're doing all the things correctly, and it doesn't even matter. You can do everything correctly and that stall is still going to happen. So at about 3 weeks, you'll see a stall. And Justy and I, in talking about it, she made a really good point. It's not just bariatric patients. When you start you make the decision that you're going to like lead this healthy lifestyle. You leave the Big Macs behind. You start working out. You start eating a little healthier. It's typically about 3 weeks in then too, because your body's going through these changes. So it's these changes, and it's like, hold up, I don't like this change. Let me hang on to this fat. So your body is like in survival mode and it wants to just hang on. So that's when the stall happens. And for bariatric patients, they call it the 3 week stall because it's typically right around 3 weeks. It can turn into a slight plateau, but there is no way as a bariatric patient that that's it after 3 weeks. You're in such a calorie deficit. There's no way for you to not continue losing weight. So that's just something to keep in mind. Keep going. You're going to keep losing. It is physically impossible for you to not keep losing after only 3 weeks because you're eating less than 1,000 calories, but your body is in starvation mode and it's hanging on to it. So that is the most well-known stall, especially for bariatric patients. But like Justy and I were saying earlier when we were talking, that it's for everybody. You're going to hit that as well. And it's mostly because your body is kind of freaking out. It's an asshole and it wants to keep the fat. It wants to know that you know, if you take it back to like cavemen days, it thinks that you're starving, that you don't have food. And so that it needs to hang on to that to continue living. So there's that.
For bariatric patients too, it's almost like it's forced. The calorie deficit, everything is forced. For us that didn't have bariatric surgery, if we just don't do so much, right? We think we have to go from eating a pizza to salad every day. And that's when your body goes in that shock mode. After a few weeks, it's like, holy shit, what is this person doing? I need to hold on to this because my comfort zone is now gone.
Right.
But if we just slow roll it a little bit and not expect to lose 5 pounds a week or not to do these drastic things, yeah, you're not going to lose 5 pounds a week, but you're going to lose a steady amount and your body's not going to be so shocked. You'll still have stalls, you'll still have days. Maybe your stall is days instead of weeks because your body will adjust to the small things easier than it adjusts to these big drastic
Right.
movements. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a step versus a slide. If you
Mm-hmm.
just make the small changes, like, you know what, I'm gonna have a salad for lunch, but I'm still gonna eat that pizza for dinner tonight. That's a step. It's not like I'm having salad for lunch, I'm having salad for dinner. I'm gonna eat sugar-free Jello for dessert. Like instead of making all the changes, if you're looking for just those little steps, your body will adjust a hell of a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Okay, so I had to reel myself back in where I was going. So installs, and we looked up the definition, and Justy kind of gave the definition before, but I really like the analogy of it versus your car engine because in the true definition when I looked it up, it compared it to you know, a car stall. And I think that's really good to think about your body like that. Like it's typically when your car goes into like an overload. um and it shuts it down. And so it's the same thing. Your body goes into this overload and it's like shutting down, but a stall is just that. Your car will start again. Justy mentioned earlier, she's like, you remember when you used to have to like hit the gas and try to turn the key back when you turned a key,
Like pump
hit the
it,
gas,
pump
try to
it,
turn
pump
the
it.
and pump it. Yeah, just keep turning the key, just keep pumping it. It will start again. Just rub the steering wheel a little bit. It's gonna start again. And so just know that that's the difference between a stall and a plateau. You can turn your stall into a plateau if you're like, fuck it, you know what, if already I can't lose the weight and it's the 100th time I've tried to lose the weight, then fuck it, I'm just gonna, where's that ice cream at, you know, like don't let your stall turn into a plateau basically.
Mhm. And you really
um
control that. So you control whether or not it's a stall or a plateau by how you respond to it. And so we've been on plenty of stalls that turned into plateaus that turned into regain.
right, right,
um, and it's just a cycle. But if you want to truly stop the cycle, it's knowing you're going to have a stall and already having like these things that you're going to do to battle it. Like, I'm going to talk to myself differently. I'm going to encourage myself. I'm going to have a really strong reason why I want to keep going. I'm going
right.
to, not treat myself like an asshole and think of myself as a failure. I'm going to think of myself as normal and this happens and give myself some grace, but continue
Yes.
to be honest with myself on what I'm doing. So, am I actually having ice cream every night now because I'm not losing weight, which really makes no sense. So you're
Right.
losing weight, the scale stops. Now let me eat a bunch of ice cream. Um, and realistically, it should be I'm losing weight, the scale stops, let me do better. But
Yeah. And
instead,
is it crazy?
right.
Yeah, because we're just so conditioned and so trained to think like, well, fuck it, it hasn't worked before. What makes me think it's gonna work now? And I was mentioning to Justy, and that's the difference with weight loss surgery. It's like and that's why they call it a tool because it stops you from completely derailing your whole journey. Because there's been times when I've hit that stall and I'm like, and I get the fuckets and I go and I eat a cookie and then all of a sudden I lose weight and I'm like, I lost weight and I ate a cookie. It's not the cookie. The cookie didn't make me lose weight. But that leads me into where I was heading into with plateaus. When I went to my nutritionist, I had an appointment and you know, I was kind of like stalled and it turned into a plateau and I'm like, and I was doing all the right things and she said to me, you just need to shake up your macros because they don't give you specific calories. Well, at least mine didn't give me specific calories and everything, but they do say here's how much protein you need to meet so you don't like you're not eating your muscle, your body's not eating the muscle. You need to have that protein, minimum protein to continue lose fat and not muscle. Um, Carbs, they gave me a max amount of carbs, but she was like, depending on how much you work out and everything, you might need to up your carbs. Maybe you need to lower your fat. She's like, just play with it a little. Whatever you've been doing, flip flop it some. Drop your maybe you had too many carbs. Drop your carbs some and up your fat a little bit. And if that doesn't work, then up your carbs, drop and drop your fat, like vice versa. So shake that up versus just getting a case of the fuckets and going all, diving off of the, face dive off of the platform and just start going back to old bad habits. Just shake it up.
And I'm
Because the
kind of on
plateau,
a, sorry, I'm
no,
kind
go
of
ahead.
on a stall right now. I have been about 186 for about 3 weeks. So I had surgery 3 weeks ago. And my body's just not the same. So it's just swollen. I'm having some, just it's just not the same. And so I'm giving myself grace. I'm still, but I'm not, I didn't eat a pizza because of it. And I
Right.
know that if I continue, I'm bloated right now because of my cycle going to start. Like there's a lot of other things than the scale. So I'm not considering my lack of losing pounds right now as a stall. I'm considering it, my body is adjusting to just having surgery and all this stuff that's going on hormonally inside of me. But I'm continuing to do the thing so it doesn't turn into a plateau.
Yes. Yeah, because it does. It's like a whole snowball effect. Like
Mhm.
it's like it was just a stall and now the mind game. That's where the mind game comes into play. Um, but when it comes to plateaus, I want to say so in the bariatric world, we call it the honeymoon phase. The honeymoon phase is when you can almost do no wrong. It's that like kind of first year, even when I said, you know what, I'm gonna eat this cookie, and then I lost weight and it wasn't because of the cookie. That's just part of it. You can do that in the honeymoon phase, and you're still gonna lose weight because your body, you're just not getting, you're in a calorie deficit no matter what you do. As time goes on, you are able to tolerate more food. It's not that you've stretched your pouch out or anything like that. It's the from what I learned, your stomach is swollen, like your actual stomach, not the outside, the stomach, from the surgery, from all the stitches, from everything that you went through, and the swelling goes down as it's healing, which is then going to allow more food to fit in your stomach. So when I heard it in that sense, it made sense to me like, oh, that makes sense. I didn't ruin myself. I didn't stretch my pouch out. My stomach is allowing more food in there because it's healing and the swelling is going down. And so it takes time for that. After the honeymoon phase is over and it's about a year or so out, most people will plateau there. And I imagine it's probably very similar in the non-bariatric world too. Like you've been doing all these changes, you've been going through it, and your body's like, I'm good right here. This is good. And when I signed up to do bariatric surgery, they told me you're only going to lose, I forget what the actual statistic is, but I was mind blown because they say you're not going to lose all of your expected weight. You're expected to lose, like, I don't know, let's say 75% of what you're like what you should lose, or to get like your goal weight is you're not your goal weight isn't going to be, I couldn't say like, oh, my goal weight's 125 and I'm going to get there after having bariatric surgery, because that's just not realistic. You will only lose a percentage of what you need to lose. And I thought that was weird. I'm like, well, why is that? Because like if I just keep working hard, wouldn't I lose all of my weight? But it's not that simple. Your body has, I've been overweight my whole life. I'm 46. My body wants to hang on to this fat. It is fighting to hang on to this fat. You have hormones in play, you have all this stuff in play. So after that honeymoon phase is over, you hit that plateau, and then it's that's the game change. That's when you hear people say, "Oh, my cousin's brother's nephew's, Bob gained all his weight back." Well, that's when it happens because you no longer, your tool isn't as effective. You have to put the hard work in at this point. You've hit that plateau and you have to make the decision, am I going to let this plateau turn into regain, or am I going to let this plateau be what it is, shake things up, and just keep working excuse me, working hard or maintaining, because maybe that is all that you're going to lose. Maybe you're not going to get down to 150 pounds and you're going to stay at 165, 170. But then that's when you make the choice of, does it turn into regain or is it simply a plateau? And is a plateau maybe the end? Maybe it's not a plateau. Maybe that's just where, maybe it's maintenance. So a plateau could be
Yeah, and I
maintenance,
think
turn to maintenance
that's
or regain.
that's a really good point. So I was talking to my accountability partner that's in Puerto Rico, and she's just really frustrated because she has been on a plateau for a while. And, we just had the conversation like, maybe this is where you are going to be. Maybe your goal needs to be something other than weight. Maybe your goal needs to be a physical goal, or your goal needs to be, toning up your muscles or something like that. So it's interesting how I wanted to be under 200 for so long. I'm like 186 right now. And I honestly don't care about weight anymore. It's like, I'm fine. But for non-bariatric patients, you're going to go through this cycle. You're going to lose some weight. You make habit changes, you lose some weight. You're going to stall. Continue to follow those habits, you'll come out of your stall, right? You're going to stall again. If you continue to do those same habits, that stall might be harder because your body is now used to what you've been doing for a while.
Right.
So at that point, you're going to have to, after a couple of weeks, decide, is this a stall or do I need to level up so it doesn't turn into a plateau? And that's just the cycle, constantly, constantly, constantly. You will get to a point where you don't want to level up more than what you're doing. And that's where I'm at. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm not willing to do any more than I'm doing right now. And I'm happy with where I'm at. It's not the goal weight that I thought I wanted. But
But
I'm
you're
not willing.
comfortable.
I'm comfortable and I'm not willing to
Yeah.
do more. I could do more and lose more weight. I could do more. I'm more about building muscle now, but I don't want to. And that's okay. And so, but I've worked through stall after stall after stall to not turn into plateaus to get to the point where I'm like, yeah, this is where I want to be. And I think holding on to that beginning idea of what I wanted to be, um, it it wouldn't work for me. So I'm just, now I'm comfortable where I'm at, and that's okay. I don't want to get any bigger. Like I don't want to gain weight, and I know what I need to do to stay within this range pretty much. So yeah, at some point your stall is gonna turn into a plateau unless you make more changes, I guess is what
Right.
I'm trying. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to determine where you're at in your journey. So you're comfortable. And I was kind of in the same place. So I will say when I got under 200, and I was kind of like, I got down into like the low 170s and then I stalled, plateaued, and I had my regain. And then I was like 180s, 190, and I'm like, I mean, I'm okay here. And I told myself I was comfortable with that. Like, if this is it, this is it. And then I regained some more and I popped back up just over 200. And I was like, oh. And that's when I really took charge and I went back to my doctor and everything like that. But then when I lost the weight and I got back down like below 160, it's the first I've seen that, I was like, this is it for me. This is where I need to be. Now the BMI is my BMI is still telling me I'm overweight. I'm never not going to be overweight because I got to like 151 and I was hella uncomfortable. I felt like I didn't look good. I didn't like the way I felt, even though it was your lowest weight isn't always your happy weight. It isn't always
Right.
your healthiest weight. And
Mhm.
that's okay. 151 still says I'm overweight according to the stupid, BMI chart, but that's not where I wanted to be. I am much happier like 155, 160, which is exactly where I'm at now. I'm hovering from what I can tell on the gym scale, which is weird, but whatever, because I don't know where my scale is. Um, uh, I'm comfortable. And so
Mhm.
for me, even without the scale, this is like a blessing in disguise that I don't have my scale. I'm forced to read my body in a different way. I did get my Renfo uh
Tape measure.
what do you call it? Thank you. I did get that. So I have that to use for my scale and my clothes, because I refuse to buy. I didn't keep any of my clothes. I have like a pair of shorts that are too big because I don't really like to wear shorts anyway because I'm not a fan of my thighs. But I have them, they're a little bit too big, they're saggy in the butt, but they're good for me for like, around the house kind of thing. But I didn't keep any clothes that fit me when I was bigger. And I don't want to buy those clothes. So that's going to be my true judge of where I am in my journey. Like, if my clothes start getting too tight, girl, you better rein it in. Like, bring it
Mhm.
back, because we're not buying new clothes. The only new clothes I'm buying are super cute clothes that fit me in the size that I'm at now. I am not buying bigger clothes, and I don't want to have to buy smaller clothes. And that's why I went off of Manjaro altogether, because I don't want to keep losing. I don't feel good at a lower weight,
Mhm.
but I have to figure this maintenance part out. So this, what is now, I guess, plateau, is my maintenance. So
Mhm.
those are your options. You can either plateau and go into regain, or you can plateau and go into maintenance. So it's kind of like
And I
fork in the
and
road. Which one are you doing?
and for me, I'm comfortable right now. I think in the 180s is where I'm comfortable. I also know that I'm continuing to change my body. So we were talking earlier, before I had my skin removal surgery, I was around 220. And then I started really like 4 to 6 months before, started really, really hitting the gym really hard. I wanted to tone up. I needed muscle tone. And might needed ab muscles and all that to get in and out of bed. So I worked out with a personal trainer. I worked out for like a month hard and did not lose any weight, pounds, like on the
And
scale.
that's
But
frustrating.
yeah, but my body was changing. I could now see my quads popping out. I could see my biceps popping out. Like those things are what kept me motivated. And so maybe sometimes a stall isn't just the scale. So a stall, because I didn't lose weight, but my body was changing. My clothes were getting bigger. My stomach was getting smaller. My skin was getting looser, but I just wasn't losing pounds on the scale. So I had to remind myself of all this work that I'm doing and what my end goal is. And that was to be strong as fuck for my surgery.
Right.
And so, and not beating myself up over the scale. The scale is, I mean, the scale is necessary. It's a one way of telling how you're doing, but it's not the end all be all of weight loss, if that
Right.
makes sense. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So the plateau isn't simply the scale's not moving. It's not the scale has plateaued.
Mhm.
A true plateau is the scale's not moving. I've not gone down in inches.
Mhm.
um my clothes haven't changed, they're not bigger, they're not
Mhm.
smaller. That's a true plateau when nothing is moving. But
Right.
just because the scale isn't moving does not mean you're not making progress.
Right. And also what we were talking earlier, when you get to the point where there's a plateau or a stall where nothing's changing. So nothing's changing. Then you really have to be honest with yourself. So
Hmm.
after about 3 weeks or so, if you are truly doing what you were doing before the stall happened to lose that first 15 pounds or whatever it is, then the weight should be coming off, right? After about 3 weeks or so. So if it's not, then you really have to be honest with yourself. And that's when you need to like put yourself in check and start writing down what you're actually eating. You don't have to track it, right? But writing it down, being really honest with yourself. Am I taking bites here where I wasn't before? Am I having a couple of, oh, fuck it, I'll do better tomorrow days when I wasn't before? So it's really about checking yourself and being honest, and holding yourself accountable, which is really, really difficult to do.
Yeah.
And then making the adjustments back to what you were doing. And then you'll see the weight start coming off again.
And I think that goes back to when we talked to Jeannie about regain. Why wait until it's regained to do those steps that she had talked about? First step she has people do is write it down, not tracking, not counting calories, but just simply writing it down. Writing down those Hershey's Kisses that you've been going into the drawer in the office and eating, just writing it down to be held accountable for it. Why wait until the regain is there? Start doing that when the plateau happens, so you can get real with yourself and you can see, is
Mhm.
it something I'm doing? Am I, because you don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with, oh, I've had a glass of wine every night after work this week, but you didn't used to do that.
Mhm.
So is the glass of wine? Like, are you being honest with yourself? Are you thinking like this is no big deal? And typically you see the changes a week after. We talked about this as well. You see the changes about a week after. It's the changes the change doesn't have you don't gain 5 pounds this week because you ate, 10 Hershey's Kisses today.
You
No,
gained the
that
5 pounds
weight,
last week.
yes, it's gonna come the week after. Like
Yeah.
it's a delay. So you can't think that it's instant, like, oh boy, I ate pizza today and then tomorrow I gained 5 pounds. Well, probably some of that is water retention,
Mhm.
sodium, that kind of stuff. There's so many pieces that come into play. And instead of trying to figure all those little pieces out, just keep
Stay
going.
the course. Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
yes. Trust the process. I heard it so many times right after I had surgery, and I'd hear people say, trust the process, trust the process. I'm like, fuck the process, man. Like, because you get frustrated. But you really have to, as much as you may hate the saying, you really have to just trust as long as you keep doing what you know you're supposed to do and you're honest with yourself, you will keep going
Mhm.
until you get to the end. And like we said, I really thought to myself, like, oh, because I thought like maybe like 140 because that's where the scale wants me to be for me to not be considered overweight. I would just love for once in my life to not be considered overweight. But guess what? It is what it is. I mean,
I
at this
have to
point,
be like 162 to not be overweight. You know,
right,
I'm almost 5'10". I can't imagine being 162. Like
right,
there's nowhere on my body that I want to lose 20 some pounds because I love my curves,
right.
and it's like it's just crazy how that works. But it would be nice to not be overweight. But
Right, just to see it once, but at the
yeah.
same time, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to be overweight. Call it what you want to call it. This
Mhm.
is where I'm comfortable. I am healthy. I
Mhm.
I have zero ailments. I don't know high blood pressure. No, I just
Mhm.
don't have. I'm metabolically well.
Mhm.
I am comfortable. I feel good. I'm not waking up tired every day. You know what I mean? There's just all these little things that just being what it's just this like well-oiled machine. It's a little there's a few little creaks here and there at 46 years old, but we are like well-oiled machines. We have trained ourselves. We've been training our whole life for this, Justy. I feel like
Mhm.
since I've known
Yeah.
you, we've been working
Mhm.
towards this and we're
Mhm.
here and we can't be so hard on ourselves because the BMI chart says that we're overweight or whatever. You have to feel what you feel. You have to feel good about where you're at. And where I thought like 140 is what they say I should be, no, 150 I didn't
Mhm.
even want to be. I like
Mhm.
160-ish. I'd like 155, 160. That is my comfort zone. So I mean, just find your comfort zone and get real with yourself.
Well, and there's some other, so you'd said earlier about like having a glass of wine every day, and that's also another thing that you have to be honest with yourself. So you can lose weight and have a glass of wine every day,
Hmm.
but you got to change other things. So at some point, you'll get to the point where you've changed so much to where that glass of wine really does make a huge difference, and you're just not willing to give it up. And
Right,
that's okay. But then you have to accept that this is where you're going to be.
right.
Um, you know what I mean? And so, and maybe it's not wine. For me, I like, I have bakeries, so I really like sweets. I have a sweet almost every day. I'm probably going to always do that because I have bakeries. Can I continue to lose weight? Yep. But that means I can't have like French fries and hamburgers every day and sweets.
Right.
So
You have to
I
choose
want to,
one.
yeah, you choose what you want to give up, and you are in control of this whole process. And so you are in control of what you put in your mouth. You're in control of whether or not you plateau or regain. It's not the diet's fault. It's not the scale's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's not a fault. It's a you are choosing. It's a choice. And
Right,
so and we'll talk about it in our next podcast, I made a shit ton of excuses for myself. And so I just don't do that anymore.
yeah,
And I also had just this number in my head, this thing in my head, and I had to let that shit go because I'm never going to not be overweight unless I want to be in the 160s, and I know I don't want to be there.
right.
So giving yourself like grace and willing to listen to yourself and adjust as you go is really, really important as well.
Right. And just being comfortable. comfortable is still comfortable, may be obese for some people.
Mhm.
Like we finally got into like the overweight zone, and that's where we're comfortable, but it may be obese for you. You
Mhm.
may be so tired of fighting, like, you know what? Because for me to get down to this, I didn't really drink at all to get to my goal, you know, to my happy place. I do now. I had a couple drinks last night,
Mhm.
but getting here, I didn't. It wasn't until I got to maintenance that now I have to play the game of, okay, did I get all, I got to get all my water in. I've got to get my protein in. Then I can have a couple of drinks. Like you have to, it's a whole game that you have to play
Mhm.
to figure out like what works for you. But to lose and to get here, I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have gotten here. So
Mhm.
you just have to be dedicated to it. And then once you get to your, you know, that plateau is your final plateau and you're entering into maintenance. Now it's like, okay, you can reintroduce some things in, but you have to choose what your something is going to be. And you have
Right.
to be comfortable where you're at. It can't
Mhm.
be, I'm going to have the cake and I'm going to have the wine. And
Mhm.
by the way, I'm going to have that burger and fries and I'm going to have it all every day.
Mhm.
No, because you're going to put yourself right back to where you were before. So choose what it is that that whatever that thing is that you want to have or do,
Mhm.
and then adjust as you go, but getting real with yourself by just writing those things down, I think that's super important, um for your plateau to see what you need to do.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And you know, if I would have known this 15 years ago, it
Right.
probably would have been a little bit easier. If I would have
Yeah.
known like it is natural to stop losing weight at certain points throughout your journey, and you can do something about it. If I would have just known that and a few tips to help me, maybe it could have been better.
Right.
And so that's what we want to do is just help people understand that it's going to happen. Knowing when to identify and what it is, and then how you can combat that by not allowing it to turn into a regain before you do something about it.
Right.
So that's kind of like I think our main points of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So what's
Yep.
next?
Jesus. I do know this because you just said it. So we're going to talk about bullshit excuses. Lord knows we have a laundry list of them.
Mm-hmm.
A laundry list. I mean, we've had every excuse under the sun. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the next one. And then I think after that, we're about our mid-year checkup because
Yeah,
we're in
yeah.
June now. So
Mm-hmm.
yep, mid-year checkup on our goals, which I think, I mean, I'm just gonna spoiler alert, we're fucking crushing it. So
I'm not crushing it in one. So just real quick, since we have a few minutes, like my body pump coaching has been a little bit harder. I had my skin removal surgery. B, I changed gyms and my trainer is no longer my trainer. And C, I just had to have another surgery. And like I've just had some things physically that have put me back. And I just started arthritis medicine in my knees yesterday because that's what happens when you're 46. So there's that. And I start physical therapy on my knees soon. So I have some
but that's
physical.
a pivot though.
Yeah, it's a
That's
pivot.
not a I'm not reaching my goal. That's a pivot. You're doing all the things to reach your
Mhm.
goal. We just have
Yeah,
to pivot the goal. And you know
yeah.
what? So we'll talk about how Justy's gonna pivot her goal
Mhm.
in another,
And
I guess,
the
two podcasts from now.
the positive things that I'm telling myself in order to not fuck it and give up on it, but just being able to pivot and adjust and not talk, beat myself up over it,
Right.
because that's what I would have done in the past,
Right.
and I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So,
No shit.
all
So
right.
yeah,
Well, I
that's
think
what we
that's
have.
it.
That's our next two coming down the
Mhm.
road. So stay
Mhm.
tuned.
And we will talk to you next time on excuses.
Yes. All
All
right.
right.
Have a good one,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.